Nelson Mandela once said, "Without language, one cannot talk to people and understand them. One cannot share their hopes and aspirations, grasp their history, appreciate their poetry, or savor their songs. Thus, without language, what will happen to our world?" A greeting of a pleasant day, everyone. I am Janna Nuqui, and I am welcoming all of you to the philosophical investigations of Mr. Ludwig Wittgenstein. They say language is one of the most cognitively demanding areas of human interest. Well, indeed, it is the most powerful tool that enables us human beings to express ourselves and communicate with each other. That is why Ludwig Wittgenstein, an Austrian-born British philosopher who believed that the only work that gave him real satisfaction is philosophy, has indulged himself in analyzing and understanding how people communicate through language. And for us to know this, we'll start by discussing St. Augustine's conception of language. In his work entitled The Confessions, he said, "When they, my elders, named some object, and accordingly moved towards something, I saw this and I grasped that the thing was called, by the sound they uttered when they meant to point it out." Their intention was shown by their bodily movements, as it were the natural language of all peoples. The expression of the face, the play of the eyes, the movement of the other parts of the body, and the tone of voice, which expresses our state of mind in seeking, having, rejecting, or avoiding something. Thus, as I heard words repeatedly used in their proper places in various sentences, I gradually learned to understand what objects they signified. And after I had trained my mouth to form these signs, I used them to express my own desires. This is how St. Augustine defined language. The Augustinian view of language tells us that words are sounds that signify objects, and that every word has a meaning. This meaning is then correlated with the word. To have a clearer view, Wittgenstein did some analogies. First is the shopkeeper's thought. The context of this example ay parang katulad nung mga bata pa tayo. Kapag inuutusan na bumili at hindi natin alam kung ano yung bibilhin natin, ang gagawin ng nag-uutos ay ililista niya sa isang papel yung bibilhin mo. And in this case, the boy was also asked to shop for something. He was given a slip which he gave to the shopkeeper. Now, yung tindera, ang una niyang hinanap sa mga paninda ay yung lalagyan ng mismong object, which is the apple. That pertains to the fruit. Kasunod naman ay yung classification o description, which says that the apple must be in the color red. At panghuli ay yung quantity ng binibili, which is the stated cardinal number, and it is 5. The shopkeeper then counted while putting the apples in the bag from 1 until 5. And as someone who didn't know the meaning of these words, the boy was amused that the shopkeeper was able to act or respond on the description written on the slip. And this is what St. Augustine tries to point out, that every word has a meaning. This meaning is then correlated with the word. But Wittgenstein did not totally agree with this idea. He questioned the use of the word 5, which for him, 5 is just memorized by the shopkeeper. It doesn't have any meaning except its use. So therefore, he implied that some words do not have meanings, but rather they have a use. Another analogy is the builder's language game. Think of this idea as a video game wherein there are two characters, Builder A and Assistant B. They are working on building stones. And in this scenario, there are materials such as blocks, pillars, slabs, and beams. Ito yung mga materials na pinapakuha ni builder kay assistant. Now, like a main character, Builder A executes commands in a consecutive manner. Accordingly, like a program character, Assistant B follows what he is told to bring. This is now called the philosophical concept of meaning. It pertains to the primitive view of how language functions, wherein it answers the question, what does it mean to have meaning? Correspondingly, St. Augustine also implied that meaning is the entity for which the word stands. It serves as the essence of the word. So, therefore, he believed that language is a set of words that are present as signs or symbols for things and objects in the real world. It has a coordination between signs and references. Tulad noong sa Builder's language game, Assistant B does not initially know the meaning of each command, pero dahil the sequence was repeatedly commanded to him in completely the same order, unconsciously natutuhan niya kung ano yung mga tinutukoy ni Builder A. And to sum up these analogies, Augustine's view of language is like an oversimple concept of a script. It is similar to an algorithm that has a sort of rule that is being followed. It can be considered as a naturalistic view of language because the meaning of words naturally arises as it was repeatedly used. However, Wittgenstein somehow contradicted this idea, again, saying that Augustine's description of language is a system, but not everything that we call language is this system. Dito na ngayon papasok yung language games. Ludwig Wittgenstein said that we must view language as a series of games, because games are all different, and so the meaning of language depends upon the type of language being played. And the type of language game also depends upon the context within the meaning. Dahil tulad ng mga laro, marami itong types with different mechanics. Same with language game, marami itong types with different meanings. But first, how do we learn these meanings? St. Augustine said that language acquisition is developed by pointing. If you want to teach something to someone, you must point that something to him or her. This is what we call ostensive teaching. It is a manner of definition by means of directly demonstrating or by pointing to what you are defining. Example is when we teach children how to talk. We use the ostensive teaching method. We utter the word while pointing at the thing that it pertains to, and then we encourage the children to repeat the word. Ginagawa natin to para mas madaling makuha yung atensyon ng bata. And at the same time, makita niya kung alin yung tinutukoy mo. Thus, doing such enables one to establish an association between the word and the thing. However, this was contradicted again by Wittgenstein. In the expansion of language, he said, one will point to places and things. But in this case, the pointing occurs in the use of the words to, and not merely in learning the use. Wittgenstein suggested that pointing doesn't tell you what that means. Malalaman mong ayun yung bagay na yon, pero hindi mo malalaman kung ano yung purpose niya. Halimbawa, when you open a toolbox, makikita mo yung various tools. And as someone na hindi masyadong maalam sa paggamit ng mga yon, hindi mo aakalain na each part has a specific function. Maybe because on your perspective, pare-pareho lang naman yung tools na yon since they have similar features. Another is the cabin of a locomotive. Here we can see several handles and we might think na they are all supposed to be handled. But little do we know is that these handles have certain functions. For example, handle A is for the crank, which regulates the opening of valves. Handle B is for the switch. You can either turn it on or turn it off. Handle C is for the brakes. The higher it goes, the harder it brakes. Handle D is for the pump, which increases the speed. Hindi natin ito kaagad makakategorize dahil hindi tayo familiar. And what confuses us is their uniform appearances. Similarly, our language have many use of words. In fact, the uses of words can outweigh the number of words that we have. Nagkakaroon na ngayon ng misinterpretations dahil some words have multiple meanings. For that reason, it is said that language is like an ancient city. Over time, an ancient city is slowly filled with old and new houses. Likewise, our language tends to evolve and change. Mas lalong lumalawak, mas lalong dumarami. It has different forms which can be interpreted in so many different ways. Now, an objection from Augustine occurred. He said that this is not a complete language. And as a response, Wittgenstein said, "When is a language complete?" We cannot bound language because, like a living organism, it will continuously evolve. Moving on to the language games. It is said that our language contains the possibility of those other sentences. And here are some instances. First is the generate and elliptical sentences. This refers to the usage of brief statements or can even be a one-word statement that commonly involves the use of ellipses, especially to the terms that are difficult to understand. Halimbawa, the shortening of commands by saying only a word. Previously, we had the builder's language game. When builder A uttered the word slab, he meant to say, "Bring me a slab." It is a shortened sentence. Madaling nakuha ni Assistant B yung idea dahil nga the commands were repeatedly executed and because they both have a common goal, which is to make a stone building. However, in some cases, Assistant B might not get what Builder A exactly means because Builder A's instruction is not complete. Assistant B then might think of, how many slabs should I get? Should I just bring it there or hand it directly to him? Natural lang na mapaisip ng ganito dahil nga, our language contains the possibility of those other sentences. It is either the same thing may go the way Builder A expects, dahil same ng interpretation, but it can also be the other way around. Second is the statement or command, wherein the tone of voice also contributes to the meaning of the uttered words. In the same previous example, if Builder A used a flat intonation, saying, 5 slabs, then Assistant B might think that he probably states that he had already used 5 slabs. Kumbaga, parang iminungkahi niya lang. However, if Builder A used a high intonation, then Assistant B might interpret that he needs 5 more slabs. Same words but different intonations can also imply different interpretations. So again, we can say that our language contains the possibility of those other sentences. Next, animals do not use language. It is sometimes said that animals do not talk because they lack mental capacity. And this means they do not think, and that is why they do not talk. But they simply do not talk, or to put it better, they do not use language, if we accept the most primitive forms of language. Primitive language consists of actions similar to commanding, questioning, recounting, and chatting, which is also equivalent to walking, eating, drinking, and playing that animals do. So kung hindi kasali sa pinag-uusapan yung primitive languages, ay hindi raw gumagamit ng language ang mga hayop. And that is because animals do not have the same form of life as humans. We can consider this as an essentialist view of language, which suggests that objects may be familiar to each other, but each also has an underlying essence that makes them what they are. This is now because of the multiplicity of language. Kaya babalik na naman ulit sa idea ni Wittgenstein na language games, kung saan sinasabi niya na to imagine a language is to imagine a form of life. He implies that language is rooted to use, and its use requires a certain concept or form of life. Kumbaga, dapat mayroong iisang topic kayo nung taong kausap mo para hindi ma-misinterpret yung words na gagamitin nyo. Next is naming. Naming is something like attaching a label to a thing. However, Wittgenstein said that the process of naming does not clarify the meaning of a name. It is just a preparation for describing. Halimbawa, if you're talking to a foreigner and you have two knots, and you say, this is called two, then the person you are talking to might assume na two is the name of the group of knots. Maaaring hindi niya kaagad maisip na you're talking about the quantity dahil nga hindi niya alam yung language na gamit mo. Therefore, to prevent misunderstandings, you must first explain the definition of the word number. So you can rather say, the number of these knots are 2, followed by the proper names, which suggests that a word has no meaning if nothing corresponds to it. No meaning is equivalent to no move in the language game. It is as if it did not existed, which could never be named. Thus, this was contradicted with the concept that there is no definition of the primary elements. What exists in its own right has to be named without any other determination. Games have rules, but not all rules are listed because a game invokes a specific context or type of use. It can always be varied, for there are no criteria for a mistake in language. Also, one may learn rules by recognizing the mistake of others. For some games can be taught by watching the players play. In summary of the language games, it is said that every language game occurs against the backdrop of a paradigm, meaning depends on what activity is involved. It is also said that where our language suggests a body and there is none, there we should like to say is a spirit. Hence, if we cannot find the ostensive definition, then we must use another framework. The analysis of these language games allowed Wittgenstein to formulate the concept of family resemblances, wherein words and their uses have similarities. It is a complicated network of similarities, overlapping and crisscrossing all over each other, in that there is no singular unified system of language. Halimbawa, games have common features. In this case, let's say they all must follow rules. Now, when we try to focus on a specific type of game, some similarities can be retained while some may disappear. Ganon din sa example na nakapresent ngayon. There are types of chairs na may similar characteristic to another at meron din namang hindi. But overall, they belong to the family of chairs. Proceeding to the last topic is Frege's idea of concept. According to him, a concept is an area, wherein an area with vague boundaries cannot be an area at all. His notion also implies that if someone were to draw a sharp boundary, I could not acknowledge it as the one that I too always wanted to draw or had drawn in my mind, for I did not want to draw one at all. Frege's ideas is similar to Wittgenstein's. The kinship of their concept can be seen as vague and clear contours, which both possess similarities and differences as well. Clear contours can resemble the blurry one depending on its degree of vagueness, but it is hard to draw a clear photo out of a vague one. Bottom line is that anything and nothing is right. This is the position where we seek for definitions that correspond to our concepts. To conclude, the essence of words and the use of language can be quite perplexing and can lead to anomalies in the way we operate within our systems. Correspondingly, philosophical puzzles arise because we tend to mix up one language game with another. But with the use of logic, language can be more clear and useful. So if we better understand language, we are in a better position to assess the meaningfulness of philosophical ideas. To end my presentation, I am leaving you a quote from Stephen Lee saying, "Language barriers are the main reason that causes troubles for those wanting to assimilate and adapt to new environments. So do not be overwhelmed. Instead, gradually learn to adjust to their language games." Thank you for listening and have a great day ahead.